Although Copeland says he cooperated with the Senate investigation, the Senate committee disagreed, saying only 2 television preachers did. And the committee recommended that the IRS investigate further.
For decades, Kenneth Copeland stood at the top of the televangelist world, preaching to millions, building a global ministry, flying in private jets, and becoming one of the most recognizable religious figures in America. But every empire reaches a moment of reckoning. The price his followers paid for that empire is something nobody was ever supposed to find out. This man who once filled stadiums now finds himself standing in a courtroom where fame, fortune, and influence mean nothing. The preacher who blew away a pandemic. Copeland's downfall started with COVID-19. When the pandemic shut down the world in early 2020, most people were terrified. Millions lost their jobs practically overnight. Families could not pay rent. People were dying in hospitals without their loved ones beside them. And right in the middle of all that suffering, Kenneth Copeland, a man whose personal net worth has been estimated between $300 million and $760 million, looked directly into a camera and screamed at his unemployed followers to keep sending him money. His exact words were chilling. Fear of this coronavirus is faith in its ability to hurt you or kill you. Your job is not your source. Jesus is your source. Whatever you do right now, do not stop tithing. Do not stop sowing offerings. Think about what that means for a moment. A man sitting inside a 1,500-acre gated compound with a private airport, a fleet of jets, and an 18,000-square-foot mansion was telling single mothers and laid-off factory workers that they needed to keep funding his lifestyle, or they were betraying God. And he was not done. Copeland told his television audience that they could be healed of COVID-19 simply by touching their screens during his broadcast. He compared the virus to a common flu. He said that if anyone at his church services showed symptoms, they could be healed right there on the spot. If we have to pass out thermometers, he said, if we find one with a fever, let us get him healed right there. What do you do if you get it? Big deal. Then came the moment that turned him into a worldwide meme. Standing in his empty church with a handful of fellow preachers, Copeland launched into what can only be described as a spiritual tantrum. He screamed at the virus. He yelled at Satan. Wind, he shouted, almighty, strong, south wind, heat. Burn this thing in the name of Jesus. Then he blew a raspberry directly at the camera and declared it the wind of God. I blow the wind of God on you, he said. You are destroyed forever, and you will never be back. In a separate broadcast, he went even further. He declared himself standing in the office of the prophet of God and formally executed judgment on the virus. It is finished, he yelled. It is over. More than 1 million Americans ultimately died of COVID-19. It was not finished. It was not over. And while Copeland was performing for the cameras, reports emerged that God had supposedly told him 3 years earlier that the ministry's annual income had to reach $300 million. The pandemic was not going to get in the way of that number. And the scariest part is that COVID was not even the first time Kenneth Copeland's teachings put his followers in physical danger. The outbreak that should have ended everything. 7 years before COVID, in the summer of 2013, something happened inside the walls of Copeland's own church that should have been a permanent stain on his ministry. Measles broke out at Eagle Mountain International Church, the flagship congregation of Kenneth Copeland Ministries in Tarrant County, Texas. Measles had been declared effectively eliminated in the United States years earlier, and suddenly, 21 people inside one church were infected, including 9 children, the youngest just 4 months old. The reason the virus spread so fast was not a mystery. 16 of the 21 people who caught measles were completely unvaccinated. All of the school-age children who fell sick were homeschooled. The outbreak started when a single visitor who had traveled to Indonesia came back carrying the virus. In any normally vaccinated community, that one case would have been contained. But Eagle Mountain was not a normally vaccinated community because, for years, Kenneth Copeland had been telling his followers that trusting a doctor was the same as doubting God. In a 2010 broadcast, Copeland said it clearly: "You do not take the word of the guy that is trying to give the shot about what is good and what is not." His own daughter, Terry Copeland Pearsons, the senior pastor at Eagle Mountain, had publicly raised concerns about a supposed connection between childhood vaccines and autism, a claim that every major medical institution in the world has thoroughly debunked. Former church member Amy Arden told the Associated Press what the culture felt like from the inside. "To get a vaccine would have been viewed by me and my friends and my peers as an act of fear," she said, "that you doubted God would keep you safe. You doubted God would keep you healthy. We simply did not do it." A former staff member told CNN she had not vaccinated her own daughter for 6 years because beliefs that vaccines showed a lack of faith were permeating throughout the church. After the outbreak, Copeland's daughter set up vaccination clinics on the property, and 220 congregants got their shots. But Kenneth Copeland himself never apologized. Not once. Not publicly. 21 people sick, infants among them, and the man whose teachings created the conditions for the outbreak never said he was sorry. That tells you everything about how accountability works inside this empire. When things go wrong, the institution scrambles to contain the damage, while the man at the top keeps preaching as though nothing happened. The pop singer, the failed marriages, and the garage that changed everything. The Kenneth Copeland who screamed at viruses and demanded tithes from the unemployed did not start out as a preacher. He started out as a singer. In 1957, at 20 years old, Copeland had a Billboard Top 40 hit called "Pledge of Love" on Imperial Records. The song stayed on the charts for 15 weeks and got him on American Bandstand. For a kid from Lubbock, Texas, it looked like the start of something big. But everything behind the spotlight was falling apart. Copeland married his first wife, Ivy Bodiford, in 1955 when he was barely 18. They had a daughter named Terry, and by 1958, the marriage was over. That same year, he married Cynthia Davis. That lasted until 1961. 2 marriages and 2 divorces before he turned 25, with a music career that was going nowhere. Something shifted in 1962 when Copeland claims a car accident triggered a spiritual awakening. He married Gloria Neese in 1963, and this time the relationship held. By 1967, at 30 years old, Copeland enrolled at Oral Roberts University in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He was a decade older than most freshmen, but he had one advantage nobody else in his class had. He could fly. That skill landed him in the cockpit of Oral Roberts's personal plane. He became the co-pilot and chauffeur for the man who had pioneered televangelism and seed faith theology, the doctrine that money given to a ministry comes back to the donor multiplied. Copeland watched Roberts up close, saw how he turned spiritual authority into financial power, and absorbed every lesson. Then came Kenneth Hagin. Copeland has described locking himself inside a garage for 7 consecutive days, listening to cassette tapes recorded by Hagin, a Tulsa preacher who taught that spoken words have the literal power to create material wealth and physical health. When Copeland came out of that garage, he had the blueprint for an entire ministry. He and Gloria founded Kenneth Copeland Ministries in Fort Worth, Texas, before the end of 1967. The motto was 3 words: Jesus is Lord. What his first followers could not have known was that their pastor had reverse-engineered his entire belief system from another preacher's cassette tapes in a locked garage, had 2 failed marriages behind him, and had spent his 20s chasing pop music fame that never came back. The man they were trusting with their spiritual lives had rebuilt himself from scratch, and he was about to build something much bigger than a church. The compound, the jets, and the family business. Within 2 decades, Kenneth Copeland Ministries grew from a small Fort Worth operation into a global broadcasting empire. The television program Believer's Voice of Victory reached audiences across 5 continents. The magazine attracted over 600,000 subscribers in 134 countries. International offices opened in Canada, Africa, Asia, Australia, Europe, and Ukraine. The operation employed roughly 500 people with a budget running into the tens of millions. The physical compound in Newark, Texas, told the real story. 1,500 acres behind iron gates, a full church, production studios, warehouses, family residences, and a private airport, complete with a runway and hangar for the ministry's fleet of aircraft. That fleet eventually included a Gulfstream 5 purchased from filmmaker Tyler Perry, a Cessna Citation X, and a Cessna Citation Bravo, collectively worth more than $40 million. Copeland's personal residence sat on 24 lakefront acres inside the compound, 18,000 square feet, 6 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, spiral staircases, crystal chandeliers, and doors reportedly imported from a castle. The home was valued at $7 million, and thanks to a Texas law that classifies clergy residences as tax-exempt, Copeland paid roughly $3,000 a year in property taxes instead of the $150,000 he would have owed otherwise. Local taxpayers in Tarrant County quietly absorbed the difference. The family's control over the ministry was absolute. Internal bylaws obtained by CBS News showed that Copeland personally held veto power over every board resolution. He served as board president. Gloria was vice president. Their son-in-law, George Pearsons, was senior pastor, secretary, and treasurer. Their son, John, served as CEO and operations vice president. The church bylaws explicitly stated that members had no voting rights on operational or financial matters. Regular congregants had zero say in how their donations were spent. A 2008 Associated Press investigation revealed layers that went deeper than anyone expected. Copeland's brother-in-law had a lucrative deal brokering the ministry's television airtime. John Copeland had leased church-owned land in 1993 for a private cattle and horse business called El Rancho Fe, then purchased additional church property that more than quadrupled in value. Board members had collectively been paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for speaking at church events. The ministry owned Security Petrol, an oil and gas company with gas well reserves under church land valued at $23 million. And former employees told WFAA reporter Brett Shipp that around 10,000 prayer requests stuffed with cash arrived at the ministry every week, and that Kenneth Copeland personally read 0% of that mail. The people sending those letters believed their prayers were going straight to their pastor. Their money was going straight into a machine they would never be allowed to see inside. The Senate investigation that went nowhere. In November of 2007, Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa sent letters from the Senate Finance Committee to 6 televangelist ministries demanding financial records. Kenneth Copeland was one of the 6, alongside Benny Hinn, Creflo Dollar, Eddie Long, Joyce Meyer, and Paula White. Grassley wanted to know whether these ministries were abusing their tax-exempt status to fund personal luxury. Of the 6, only Joyce Meyer and Benny Hinn cooperated. Kenneth Copeland Ministries submitted what Grassley's office called an incomplete response. The ministry denied having any subsidiary organizations. Investigators found evidence of at least 21 such entities, including a tax-exempt company called Pitcherman Inc., governed by a board of 3 people, Kenneth, Gloria, and John Copeland. KCM even refused to disclose the names of its board members. Grassley's staff reported something deeply troubling. Insiders at the ministry who wanted to cooperate with the investigation told committee staff they feared retaliation. The atmosphere was described as one of fear and intimidation, directed at the ministry's own employees. The investigation lasted more than 3 years. When the final report dropped on the 6th of January 2011, it confirmed what investigators had suspected. The $20 million ministry jet had been used for personal vacations to Hawaii, an exotic game ranch in South Texas, and a Colorado ski resort. 15 family members on the payroll with combined salaries of $1.5 million. An oil company sitting on $23 million in reserves. All of this funded by tax-exempt donations from people who had no right to see how a single cent was spent. And after all of that, the result was nothing. No penalties, no charges, no enforcement. Grassley recommended that a private evangelical oversight body study the issue. Ole Anthony, president of the Trinity Foundation Watchdog Group, called the outcome a disappointment and said the body Grassley recommended had no teeth to compel accountability. Kenneth Copeland responded at a ministers' conference by calling Grassley's findings bull and stupid, and then he kept preaching. Keep that reaction in mind, because the way Copeland handles confrontation follows an identical pattern every single time, and the most infamous example was still to come. Angel Flight 44 and the promise that never flew. The pattern of collecting money for causes that never materialized did not begin with COVID. In 2006, during the Southwest Believers Convention, in front of 17,000 people, Copeland announced the creation of Angel Flight 44, a humanitarian aviation ministry that would maintain a fleet of cargo planes and helicopters to deliver disaster relief around the world. A book by the same name was co-written with Rich Vermillion and Glenn Hyde. 70,000 copies were distributed to donors. The program was promoted in 3 separate issues of Believer's Voice of Victory magazine. On the 12th of January, 2010, a catastrophic earthquake struck Haiti. Over 200,000 people died. Angel Flight 44 was created for exactly this kind of moment, and it was nowhere to be found. Vermillion went public. Kenneth Copeland's promised Angel Flight 44 ministry is nowhere to be found, and the money he collected to start that ministry has not been accounted for, he told the Christian Post. His assessment grew harsher over time. My experience with Kenneth Copeland, his family, and his ministry has given me the regrettable opinion that they may be nothing more than religious frauds. When pressed, KCM spokesman Dr. Stephen Swisher admitted the program was not a specific promise with a timeline attached. He disclosed that Angel Flight 44 had collected a total of $7,788.43. All of it had been spent on plane repairs. 70,000 books distributed, 3 national magazine features, 17,000 people at the launch event, and the total raised was under $8,000. Meanwhile, WFAA flight records showed the ministry's jets making trips to Hawaii, game ranches, and ski resorts, not Haiti. The people who donated believed they were funding disaster relief for the most vulnerable people on Earth. Their money went toward maintaining the personal aircraft of one of the richest men in America. The courtroom that never existed. Now we come to where this story started. Those viral videos from 2025 showing Kenneth Copeland collapsing in court after hearing a life sentence. Millions of people watched them. Millions more shared them. And every single frame was fabricated. Snopes confirmed it. The videos were assembled using artificial intelligence-generated editing, synthetic voice narration, and completely fictional scripting. The judge in the footage, Martin Reynolds, was not a judge at all. The image used was a photograph of a former British civil servant who served as principal private secretary under Prime Minister Boris Johnson. The entire production was content farm fiction, designed to generate YouTube advertising revenue. Kenneth Copeland has never been arrested. He has never been charged with a crime. He has never stood trial, and he has never been sentenced to anything. The United States Senate investigated him for 3 years and walked away empty-handed. The IRS denied a tax exemption on one of his jets in 2009, but never pursued further enforcement. His $7 million mansion still qualifies for a property tax exemption under Texas law. His financial records remain sealed behind the legal protections that churches enjoy under the federal tax code. And that is exactly why those fake videos spread as fast as they did. People were not sharing them because they were gullible. They were sharing them because after decades of watching everything that has been documented about this ministry, from the measles outbreak to the COVID exploitation to the Senate stonewalling to the Angel Flight 44 disappearing act, the idea that Kenneth Copeland might actually face consequences felt like the ending the story always deserved, but never got. Kenneth Copeland is 89 years old. He still preaches. The jets still fly. The donations still arrive by the thousands every single week. And nobody, not the Senate, not the IRS, not a single court in the country, has ever made him open those books. The courtroom video was fake, but the empire it described, the lifestyle it exposed, and the questions it raised about where all that money actually goes are completely and undeniably real. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think ministries like this should face the same financial transparency rules as every other nonprofit in the country? Or has the system been designed to look the other way?